All right, here we go. Chapter 2, The Planting of English America from 1500 to 1733. Let me hide this down on the bottom. We don't need to see that. All right, in England's imperial stirrings, King Henry VIII broke from the Roman Catholic Church in the 1530s, launching the English Protestant Reformation, which is something you should be aware of, and intensifying the rivalry with Catholic Spain. King Henry VIII was tired of listening to the Pope, didn't want to answer to him anymore, and created the Church of England, essentially, and made himself the reigning Pope. So, creating a situation here where he no longer has to answer to somebody else. And this angers Spain because they're a Catholic country. In 1580, Francis Drake circumnavigated the globe, plundering and returning with his ship loaded with Spanish booty. He had a profit of about 4,600%. When the English fleet defeated the Spanish Armada, Spain's imperial dreams and fighting spirit had been weakened, helping to ensure English naval dominance over the North Atlantic. So, two things here. Francis Drake is a privateer, essentially a pirate, who was commissioned by a government, in this case, the English government, to go around the world attacking Spanish fleets, attacking Spanish gold ships in particular, which he did. And he came back with a ton of it. That didn't make Spain happy. And eventually Spain builds a massive armada, which is a huge fleet, and they're going to send it to England, and their goal is to wipe out England once and for all. And due to some weather and some, I guess, better sailing technology, the English are able to defeat the Spanish. And the Spanish Armada, which half of it kind of crashes in the English Channel in the bad weather, and the other half is defeated by a smaller, more agile English fleet. England essentially claims naval dominance, and this really opens up North America to English colonization. There's Queen Elizabeth. Here's kind of the reign. Henry VIII, 1485 to 1509. We have early voyages. Henry Cabot exploring around, looking for a northwest passage. Sorry, that was Henry VII. Henry VIII is 1509 to 1547, when the English Reformation began, the breaking from the Catholic Church. Edward VI with strong Protestant tendencies. And then Bloody Mary, 1553 to 1558, was a Catholic reaction. It's essentially kind of a civil war that breaks out. And then Elizabeth I, 1558 to 1603, break with the Roman Catholic Church. So Francis Drake stealing from the Spanish, and the Spanish ultimately sending the Armada and being defeated, giving England naval dominance and opening up trade and exploration and colonization in the New World. England on the eve of empire. An economic depression that hit England in the later part of the 1500s caused many people to lose their homes. This, coupled with peace with the Spanish, set the stage for the English to start moving to North America. As a whole, England possessed a unified national state, a popular monarch, a measure of religious unity, a sense of nationalism, and a restless population due to lost homes. So having people with some means, not a lot of means, but with some means, and a relatively cohesive government enabled for companies to advertise for people to head to the New World and to start things known as charters or joint stock companies, which we'll get into a little bit later. This is Sir Walter Raleigh. He was one of the early, I guess you could say, funders of some of the English colonies, specifically in Virginia. In 1606, a joint stock company known as the Virginia Company of London received a charter from King James I of England for settlement in the New World. The company landed in Jamestown on May 24, 1607, and this will become known as the first permanent English settlement. So it survives. Prior to that, there had been one, a place called Roanoke, and they disappeared. The settlers were running out of supplies. They sent ships back to England. The Spanish Armada arrived. The ships couldn't leave for a while, and by the time they got back, all of the colonists were gone. So that would have been the first permanent colony, but it did not survive. So Jamestown is considered to be the first permanent English colony in the New World, aka North America, and soon to be the United States. In 1608, Captain John Smith took over the town and forced the settlers into line. The first settlers there, because they're part of a joint stock company, which is funded by investors, are attempting to make a profit, and they think there's gold. They're trying to find gold, trying to find anything of value. And the reality of it is there really isn't much of value there other than the soil and the lumber. And that required hard work. And they weren't really interested in that type of hard work. Agriculture is hard work, and those early settlers weren't interested in trying to do it. And obviously harvesting lumber is pretty hard work. Captain John Smith comes over and he kind of forces the settlers in line. By 1609, of the 400 settlers who came to Virginia, only 60 survived the starving winter of 1609 to 1610. Just didn't have enough food. They still didn't understand how to essentially store up for winter. So here we see Virginia and Maryland. You can see the areas settled, obviously very close to the coast. You can see Jamestown in there, 1607. Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, will essentially be the capital here later. Places like Norfolk and Hampton and St. Mary's. This is Pocahontas. Lord Delaware. I think you now understand where the name Delaware comes from. Reached Jamestown in 1610 with supplies and military. He started the first Anglo-Powhatan War when he started raiding and burning Indian villages. The Indians were again defeated in the Second Anglo-Powhatan War in 1644, and by 1685, the English considered the Powhatan people to be extinct. So roughly 80 years after the first English settlers landed and established Jamestown, the Powhatan Native Americans were gone. This is an early artist rendering. Of special note is the doll that the Indian child is carrying, so we know that they've had interactions with the English. Disease was the biggest killer of Indians and their cultures. Just like it was with the Spanish interacting with the Native Americans, it'll be the same with the English. It took a particularly high toll on elderly Indians, which led to the extinction of cultures. Most of their culture and their history was passed down orally and usually through elders. And when they were dying off so fast, a lot of their culture and history was lost. Again, early paintings of Native Americans or drawings. These are closer to Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. John Rolfe married Pocahontas in 1614, ending the First Anglo-Powhatan War. In 1619, self-government was made in Virginia. The London Company authorized the settlers to summon an assembly known as the House of Burgesses. This will be the first of many small parliaments in America, often considered to be the first representative government or form of government in the Americas. The House of Burgesses essentially worked like a Congress. It had representatives. Those representatives would meet, discuss the issues, make decisions, and the people agreed to follow them. However, King James I didn't trust the House of Burgesses, so in 1624 he made Virginia a colony of England directly under his control. This is known as a royal colony. So some colonies had charters and they had limited self-government. That's limited self-government essentially begins to expand over time, giving the colonists more and more freedom. But then some colonies were royal colonies, meaning they were directly controlled by the crown. This is an advertisement to try and get people to go to the New World. So, Excellent Fruits by Planting in Virginia. Exciting, all kinds of things, just like advertising now, right? Trying to make it sound good, look like the place to be. So, check out the date on the bottom there, 1609. So, I don't think it would have been considered an exciting adventure necessarily in 1609. Pretty lucky to survive. Maryland was formed in 1634 by Lord Baltimore. Maryland was made for a refuge for the Catholics to escape the wrath of the Protestant English government. We'll see this type of thing a couple of different times in the English colonies, in which the crown grants, people that they don't particularly want in England the charter or the right to create a colony. And they do this for two reasons. One, it removes the people they don't want, and two, they still pay taxes. So the people in the colonies were still responsible for paying some sort of taxes to the crown, or at the very least, they were responsible for, sending, their raw materials or resources to the crown or to England, in which England could profit off of. The Act of Toleration, which was passed in 1649 by local representatives in Maryland, granted toleration to all Christians. So, one of our first religious freedom examples. However, that religion only included Christians, had to be a Christian. By the mid-17th century, England had secured its claim to several West Indian islands. Sugar was by far the major crop on the Indian islands. To support the massive sugar crops, millions of African slaves were imported. By 1700, the ratio of black slaves to white settlers in the English West Indies was 4-1. In order to control the large number of slaves, the Barbados Slave Code of 1661 denied even the most fundamental rights to slaves. So this is basically takes away all the rights of slaves. And it's the same type of slave codes that are going to be brought forward to the Americas and eventually instituted here, and what becomes the 13 colonies and then eventually transitions into the United States. This is the sugarcane mill, which they are grinding out and creating sugar. That's a sugarcane plant, very profitable for the Spanish and the English. Civil War plagued England in the 1640s. In 1707, the Savannah Indians decided to end their alliance with the Carolinians and migrate to the backcountry of Maryland and Pennsylvania, where a new colony founded by Quakers under William Penn promised better relations. Almost all of the Indians were killed in raids before they could depart in 1710. So their plan was to go to Pennsylvania, which was founded by William Penn. Again, he's a Quaker. Quakers are being persecuted in England. The crown grants William Penn a charter because the English crown owed William Penn's father a lot of money. And so they grant him a charter, and he comes to create a colony. He offers essentially toleration of all, and that's one of the things that Quakers do. So they offer people, basically anybody could come there. Different religions, different races. The Quakers had probably some of the best relations with Native Americans and often sought to at least fairly compensate them for land that was lost. And around the same time, rice will become the primary export of the Carolinas, another labor-intensive crop. There's kind of the breakdown of the 13 colonies. Virginia, and then talks about founded by the London Company, which is an investment with investors, and then eventually transitioning to a royal colony. And you'll notice that some of them become royal colonies. New Hampshire is a royal colony, later absorbed by Massachusetts for a short time. Massachusetts is a royal colony. It still had limited self-government, though. Maryland is a proprietary, which means it was controlled by a proprietor, like one owner, if you will. Connecticut was self-governing under local control. New Haven, which is now a city in Connecticut, merged with Connecticut. Rhode Island, self-governing. Connecticut and Rhode Island were two of probably the most progressive self-governing colonies. Delaware was a proprietary colony. North Carolina was royal. New York was royal. New Jersey was royal. Carolina, separated formally from North Carolina in 1712, was a royal colony. Pennsylvania, again, owner William Penn, proprietary. And then Georgia, royal colony, was actually founded by George Oglethorpe and as a haven for debtors from debtors' prisons, which at this time, if you couldn't pay your debts, you got thrown in prison until you could pay your debts, which most people couldn't do then, and often ended up spending a great deal of time there until their family bought their way out. So this gave people who were in debt an opportunity to make money, and so they came over to the New World mostly indebted to James Oglethorpe. I think I said George before. It's James Oglethorpe, and they had the ability to pay off their debts by working over here, and then the debts they owed to others. And there you see North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. You can also see where New Spain is. This is the Iroquois Confederacy, and basically what we call upstate New York now, bordering that New England region. This is basically a birch bark canoe, I guess would be the best way to describe it, often used by the Iroquois. Here's the type of lodges that they would make. The English founded Georgia to primarily serve as a buffer to protect the Carolinas from Spanish in Florida and the French in Louisiana. Georgia was founded in 1733. Like I said, it was a debtor's colony originally. So the English were using it to try to make a profit, but they weren't as concerned as what Georgia had to offer, as they will be later. And that is the end of chapter 2.